In the year 2040, a base called Tantalus is established on Mars. A team of 8 astronauts has been on a 6-month mission to collect samples, and today is their final day. In about 19 hours, a spacecraft called Aurora will arrive from Earth to bring them home. Vincent and Rebecca are driving a rover across the Martian desert toward a dig site, and they notice that a sandstorm is approaching. When they arrive, Vincent contacts Kim on the radio, telling her it's time to head back to the base. However, Kim ignores him and continues to dig, determined to find valuable samples. When Kim finally gets on the rover, she expresses her frustration about leaving without any samples. Back at the base, Marco asks Charles if he can make one last trip to the excavation site to fix a broken gamma sensor. Charles agrees and tells him to take Richard along and to return before it gets dark. On their way to the site, Richard is shocked to discover that Marco lied about their mission. They are not there to fix anything, but to collect a sample of something called microscopic anomaly. Meanwhile, Kim checks Marco's workstation to find out his true intentions for the trip and discovers a picture of cavities in a rock. When they examine the sample under a microscope, they see signs of bacterial cell division. This reveals that Marco was dishonest because he wants to take full credit for the find. Meanwhile, in the excavation site, Marco takes a soil sample when suddenly the ground beneath him begins to shake and collapses. Richard jumps out of the rover to help Marco, but he struggles to see because of the steam. After requesting backup, Charles and Lauren arrive to rescue Marco. Richard fears that Marco might already be dead, but Lauren insists on descending into the pit. They decide that Lauren will stay behind to keep watch, while Charles and Richard go back to the base to get proper rescue equipment. As Charles takes Rebecca, Robert, and Vincent back to the site, Lauren waits in the rover. Suddenly, she hears someone trying to enter the vehicle and attempts to alert Charles via the radio, but he cannot hear her because of the storm interference. When the team finally arrives at the excavation site, they find that Lauren is missing. They investigate the area and discover 2 sets of footprints leading back toward the base, which is puzzling since they could have just used the rover. Back at the base, Richard checks the tracking system and spots 2 figures 50 meters from the base. As Kim tries to reach them on the radio, Richard heads to the airlock to let them in. At the same time, Kim sees a strange figure moving slowly toward the base. Richard opens the airlock and Marco falls inside, revealing a hole in his helmet. Richard helps him remove it, but recoils in horror when he sees that Marco now looks like a zombie. Suddenly, Marco stands up and grabs an electric drill, attacking Richard and stabbing him in the stomach. Richard collapses but manages to move enough to trigger the alarm. Kim rushes to the airlock, but when she sees Marco, she runs away to hide in another room. Soon after, Lauren arrives at the airlock, also revealing that she has been infected. When the others return, Charles instructs them to wait outside while he investigates the room and finds it in complete disarray. He spots Kim just as Marco starts to smash through the glass door, so Charles tells her to put on a suit while he tries to fend off the creatures. Charles then attempts to talk to Marco, but he realizes that the infected Marco isn't responsive to reason. After Kim gets suited up, she exits the base and Charles makes a run for the airlock. Unfortunately, the infected astronauts catch up to him and stab him in the shoulder. After a brief struggle, Charles manages to get outside and reunite with the others. The group quickly heads to hide in the greenhouse dome, and Rebecca tries her best to treat Charles's injury. Suddenly, Charles grabs Robert by the neck, prompting the others to pull him away and calm him down. Kim immediately ties him to a table in case he reanimates like Marco and Lauren. While they discuss their next steps, Marco peeks under the blanket and sees the infection spreading through Charles. Shortly after, they hear a loud explosion outside and rush to the monitor to see that the infected astronauts have escaped by blowing open the airlock. The creatures soon reach the dome and start banging on the door as Charles begins to twitch for a few seconds. The crew wants to get in touch with the space station, but the communication systems are down, so Vincent offers to crawl through the oxygen pipe to return to the base and fix the issue. Once Vincent departs, Rebecca takes a blood sample from Charles and realizes that he's infected. She wonders if antibiotics might fight the bacteria and administers a solution to Charles. Almost immediately, his body begins to shake and twitch, leading Rebecca to think he could be fighting the infection. When the spasms stop, Rebecca takes another blood sample from Charles and finds that the bacteria has stopped multiplying, which shows the medication doesn't cure it, but slows it down.
Kim mixes the solution into a decontamination spray to use against the creatures. Meanwhile, Vincent manages to contact Aurora, but just as he starts explaining their dire situation, the power cuts out. Robert checks the monitor and sees their infected friends have returned to the base. The team decides they will unlock the door to attract the creatures toward the airlock and spray them with antibiotics. When one of the infected astronauts enters, the decontamination spray activates, causing the creature to collapse. Unfortunately, Rebecca soon realizes that this effect only lasts for a short time because the bacteria is developing resistance to the treatment. Meanwhile, Vincent is busy trying to fix the power when he encounters an infected Richard and repeatedly hits his head with a flashlight. No matter how hard Vincent tries, Richard doesn't fall, so Vincent flees to the oxygen pipe and crawls back. He urges Rebecca to unlock the panel while warning her he didn't seal the other end of the pipe. The others put on helmets to help pull Vincent out, and Kim throws 2 bottles of antibiotics at Richard, but it doesn't stop him. Vincent and Rebecca hurry to open the airlock, hoping for a way out. At that moment, Robert notices that Charles is starting to come back to life, prompting him to bolt and lock the door behind him, leaving Kim behind to face the creatures alone. When he joins Vincent and Rebecca, he simply says that Kim didn't survive. Inside the airlock, the creature they had previously sprayed begins to stir, so Robert kicks it in frustration. Finally, the trio opens the airlock and escapes, but as they leave, an infected friend stabs Rebecca in the leg with scissors. Luckily, the group makes it fast enough to the rover, and Vincent gives Rebecca an antibiotic injection, hoping it will help her fight the infection. As they drive away in the rover, they soon realize they don't have enough power to reach the landing site. They'll need to walk, but Rebecca is unable to do so because of her injury. Vincent thinks they should return Rebecca to the base to see how they can help her. Robert wants to leave Rebecca behind because she has an infection. However, Rebecca warns him that he could be infected too, since Charles grabbed his neck. But Robert ignores her warning and remembers there's another rover at the excavation site, so they decide to go there. When they arrive, Robert walks to the other rover and contacts Vincent on the radio, telling him to abandon Rebecca. Vincent doesn't agree, so Robert leaves them behind. Vincent tries to stop him, but it's already too late. He then notices that infected creatures are chasing them, so they drive the rover through a sandstorm to escape. Vincent believes they will have enough energy to reach the landing site by morning when the sun recharges the rover's batteries. Meanwhile, the Aurora spacecraft takes off from the space station and heads toward Mars. In the morning, Vincent wakes up to a message from the space station saying a rescue team is coming. He attempts to reply, but they can't hear him. Realizing that Rebecca has left the rover, he starts to follow her footprints. He eventually finds her, but Rebecca warns him to stay away because she thinks the infection is affecting her. Desperate to help her, Vincent runs towards her, and Rebecca takes off her helmet, which causes her to suffocate. Moments later, Vincent sees the Aurora flying in, so he rushes toward the landing site. Unfortunately, he notices 3 creatures heading that way too, and he tries to alert Aurora not to open the hatch, but the storm makes it impossible for them to hear him. When the rescue team exits the ship, the creatures attack and kill them, and Vincent hears their screams through the radio. He continues onward and sees the creatures feeding on the rescue team, but they don't notice him. He then enters the ship and finds Robert in the cockpit. Robert is showing early signs of infection, making Vincent concerned about bringing the bacteria back to Earth. Suddenly, Robert attacks him and they fight, during which Robert stabs Vincent's helmet. Robert attempts to take control of the ship, but Vincent fights back and stabs him. As the ship starts to fly erratically, they continue to struggle and Vincent repeatedly hits Robert's head until he falls unconscious. Vincent then removes his blood-stained helmet and opens the hatch, sending Robert's body out into space. After that, he contacts the station to explain everything that happened. Knowing that he might be infected, he tells them his plan to crash the ship on Mars if he starts showing any symptoms. The Aurora continues on its path as Vincent awaits for a response.